The benefits of getting married at certain ages, such as the benefits to marrying in your 20s. Check this out. You know the stereotype that people who get married young are old-fashioned, ignorant, and probably going to get divorced for a lack of experience in the dating world. Well, today, the standards of society have shifted, and now it seems like anyone who gets married before 25 is considered abnormal, irrational, even foolish. Well, gosh. You know, when you're young, you have an opportunity to grow up together and appreciate how far you've come, having spent your years in your 20s married to someone, versus being single throughout your 20s and then kind of cramming those early married years when you get married when you're 35 or 45. And I'm exaggerating to make my point. You know, when you're 35, you look back, honey, do you remember we got married when you were 24 and I was 27? Yeah, those were some fun years. We traveled the world before we had our kids, starting at, you were 27, you were 28 a few years later. And that's the other thing too, when you get married when you're young, you can still spend some of those years with your spouse traveling the world, having fun, living like you're single, although you're married. And here's something else. When you're in your 30s and 40s and you don't get married in your 20s, you look back on your 20s, and unless you had a lot of tremendous historical moments in your life, pretty much your 20s will become a blur, because every weekend was about going out and partying and getting wasted. And I'm exaggerating to make my point. You were single in your 20s for your whole 20s. All you did was go to coffee shops and go out with friends and attend a few parties. And what else? Work, go home, feed your cat, walk the dog, wash the car. So you look back 10 years later, and it's like, what did I do? I did the same damn thing every weekend with friends, and then those friends moved on and I got new friends, or I didn't have any friends, and I had all these years in my 20s alone, single, versus if you got married in your 20s and you become 30, 40, you could look back and say, yeah, in my 20s, the love of my life, my significant other, we went and did this, 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 and you've got some fixated memories to look back on in your 20s, versus those who don't get married and just, like I said, if your 20s are eventful and you're doing certain things and you're loving it, hey, God bless. But for the most part, a lot of people who are single lead pretty boring lives. And I say that only because they're dependent on their friends to go do things. But then they're just friends. It's not like they're significant others. Friends, they come and go, they get busy. And if your friends get married or your friends get into relationships and you're still single, you're a little bit left behind sometimes because they're busy at home. They're at home, doing home entertainment things with each other because that's what couples do. And you're, again, left alone. So again, your 20s are just like this big blur of what significant thing did I get out of my 20s when I was single. And granted, I hope you do get something out of your 20s. I hope everybody does. Again, when you're married in your 20s, you're still working, traveling the world. You don't have to have kids right away. At least you don't have to plan for it. When you marry in your 20s, you generally don't have baggage when you're young, with numerous exes and divorces and X number of kids from multiple past husbands and wives per se. You don't have a history of trials and errors, legal battles, because with time and age, 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, you accumulate that stuff, baggage. But when you're 20s, what have you got? You got nothing, It's kind of like a clean slate, fields of white. You're starting out. It's a fresh time to start. In many cases, you don't have a lot of deeply ingrained habits and attitudes and patterns that you have to change, to make room for someone else, as you would in your 50s, 40s, and 30s. You don't have a history of mistakes, which makes it much easier to roll with life's punches and learn lessons about life and relationships with an open mind and togetherness that usually accompanies youthful optimism. You haven't had years to build up the idea of the perfect relationship or marriage, or settled into a routine so harsh that you don't have the flexibility you once had when you were younger. It's your way or the highway. Also, as you get older, in your 30s, early 40s, you don't have time to compromise. You may be more successful at this time of your life, work-wise, late 20s, early 30s, mid-30s, but the dating pool looking for marriage is small, much smaller than when it was when you were in your 20s, with available prospects. That's what happens when you're older, 30s, 40s, 50s. The dating and marriage prospects shrink. You can imagine the insanity of the grass must be greener on the other side when you get older syndrome for folks in their later years. Finding your happily ever after mate can be more achievable without the burden of waiting and searching and expecting perfection in your later years if you marry when you're younger. Another aspect about marrying in your 20s is your looks. For the most part, young people from 20 to 30, they look great. They look young, youthful, skin, hair. Their bodies are slender. Once you hit 30, once you hit 40, things change. And it's not your fault. It's the body. The bodies change. For example, I remember a woman, she was probably 28, 27, 26 even. And she confessed that her body was changing and her hips were getting wider. She lost her slenderness that she had when she was 21, 23. Another woman, and a man too, was turning 30-ish, and they were starting to see gray hair. Call that stress, call it whatever you want. Lack of nutrition sometimes causes gray hair. It's also, just comes with age. But the point is, imagine if you married when you were 23 or 25 or 27. You got your body. And the prospects in that age group are, they're kind of good looking. When you get to be 30s and 40s and 50s, well, people kind of like, and if they are, stuck on looks, and because when we were young, that's what we did see. We saw good looking people when we were in high school and college and 20s. Everybody was energetic and hey. But when you get to be your 30s and 40s and 50s, life slows down, you've got health issues, and people don't always look their best as they did when they were 10, 15, 20 years younger. You know what I mean by that? It's just the marriage pool of prospects just dwindles a little bit. It just gets a little more smaller. Because let's say, for example, you've got men who are either already married, ladies, or they're getting divorced and they're not eager to get married again. You've got men who are already in committed relationships, they're dating, but they're off the market. And that's a lot of men by that age. Or you've got men who are playing the field still. Or you've got men who are just, living with the parents, playing video games in the basement still at 40. I'm just kidding. Hey, do what you want. But that marriage pool of prospects dwindles, gets smaller and smaller with every decade. 30s, 40s, 50s. And I remember this television show where this older woman, she was in her 50s maybe. Yeah, we'll just say 50s. Successful at her career, making big bucks, queen of the office, the boss, but single. And she was sharing her complaints to her coworker who was in her late 30s, dating a man who was in his early 50s. The 50-year-old man was dating a 38-year-old woman. And the woman who was in her 50s told the younger woman, listen, you don't even know what it's like to be at my age. The dating pool of men, the marriage pool of men to pick from is a baby's pool. It's a toddler's pool. It ain't no ocean. It's small. And hey, she's right. So the moral of that story is dating and marriage prospects are in abundance when you're in your 20s, early 30s, and they start to get smaller as you get into your mid to late 30s, 40s, 50s, etc. Just reality. Also, without previous experiences, younger people are oftentimes confident enough to seal the deal and commit. Without previous experiences, younger people are oftentimes confident enough to seal the deal and get married and commit with all of their heart to sharing a life together. Because when you're younger and you're looking to get married, you marry for love. You marry because you found your sweetheart. You marry because you're in love. Later, in your 30s, 40s, 50s, you marry because there's pressure. Pressure that, I better get married now before it's too late and no one will marry me. And that goes for men and women. But listen to that. When you're in your 30s and 40s and 50s, the people in that age bracket are marrying. They want to get married, but they know there's a time clock that's ticking down. They're saying it, not me. I got to get married or else I'm going to be 50 years old or 60 or 100. No one will marry me. Because why? Looks and baggage. Hence, the benefits of marrying in your 20s. It's just reality. I'm just reporting it. Don't shoot the messenger. Now, don't get me wrong. I've seen people get married in their 30s, 40s, and 50s because they loved each other. They're very lucky. Because for every one person that gets married in their 30s, 40s, and 50s, there's a lot more who are still single. They've got their lists. They've got their lookout for the perfect mate. They've got all these requirements and so much more. And all of that is working against them. And as you get older, you've got health issues. And there's a lot of people who will not marry when they're older. They won't marry someone who's got health issues because they know in about 6 months they're going to become a caregiver and not a spouse, which is not a problem when you spend time with someone because you married in your 20s. You spent a decade with them having fun, another decade or two raising kids. And by the 4th decade, health problems set in, but it's okay because I love you. I've been with you forever. I'll be with you until the very end. But those credits aren't earned in weeks, days, and months. They're earned with years and decades. And that's why the benefits to marrying in your 20s kind of works in your favor when you get older. And then you can also make that statement about, hey, we've been together for 30 years. I've got a friend of mine. He got married when he was 24 to his gal, 22 or 23. And they can say that. Hey, we've been together for 40 years. That's pretty cool. Not a lot of people can say that. What's more, if you wanted to have kids in your 20s, it's the perfect time. The bodies are so ready to bear children. For women, that is. And these are just a few of the benefits to marrying in your 20s. I'm sure there are more. And there's others. And then, of course, there's the downsides. But let's just look at the positives for a moment. And that's what we're doing here. The benefits to marrying in your 20s. And again, you've got youthful optimism. You don't have the baggage. You've got your whole life ahead of you. And some might say, well, I want time to find myself. Well, how much time do you need? 10 years? 15? You could find yourself with someone if that someone is into you, loves you, and gives you space to go find yourself, because you don't need to find yourself on a full-time basis. Every day, I'm trying to find myself. Every single day, It all depends. To each his own. And hey, if you're young and you're listening to this, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, certainly, get through school, get through college, get out of college. If college is for you, I must add that. It wasn't for me, so I opted out. Get a job. Start a business. Start making money. Accumulate that money. Don't be a fool and spend it, frivolously and just throw it away. Save it. So by the time you're 24 or even 25, you've got a good pile of cash saved up. And then when you have that pile of cash, like I'm talking 20,000, 30, 40,000. And by the way, if you're in student loan debt and you've got 50K plus or minus that you've got to pay off, do not pressure yourself to pay that off just by having a job or a second job. You need to start some kind of online internet business, whether it's affiliate marketing, drop shipping, whatever. So you can bring in an extra $200 to $700 a month part-time, working from home, work your own hours, and use that little bit of money. We're only talking $200 to $500 a month, but that's usually what those student loan payments are. Gosh. So the point is, get a side hustle to pay off that debt while you work your regular job to create your savings. Anyway, the point is, when you have money and you're accumulating that money, you're better off finding someone who has money, and you two can either, not just pull each other's money together, but you both understand and respect money, and you don't want to be dating 10 people a week, just to be out there dating. You want to kind of get settled a little bit with someone who can see your way with things. Hey, I've got a good paying job. I make good money. I want to protect that. I don't want to be just going out every Friday night, sleeping around. No. I want to find a good, ladies, a good man, gentleman, a good woman who you can pair up with and create something. And the earlier you do it, and I'm talking getting married 24, 25, 26, 27, in your 20s. My parents, they married, my mom was 26-ish, 25, 26, I think. Maybe she was 24. I can't remember. Maybe that's when I was born. I don't know. The point is my parents got married in their 20s. And that was the thing back then. So when you get married in your 20s, you can have the babies early, go through that 1 year, 2 year, 3 year stint with the kids. And by the time you enter your 30s, the kids are like 6 years old, 7, 8. By the time you're in your 40s, the kids are in high school. That's cool. And by the time you turn 50, the kids are in college. And that's great. Kids are out of the house. You're 50, maybe you're 48, something like that. And it's just you and your husband. Let's say, you had 1 or 2 kids. If you got 3, 4, 5, that's just a different story. I got a friend of mine, he's got 6 kids. I heard somebody's got 10 kids. Yikes. Point is, when you marry young, you can have your kids early, and then you raise them, and then by the time they turn 18, you're still a young cat. You're in your 40s, and the kids are gone. Now you can live your life and do all kinds of things. I mean, people in their 40s and 50s live. They go, they do, they got time, they got money, they got this, that. So will you. Contrary to marrying in your 30s or in your 40s and having children, you're just starting to have children at age 32. So by the time the child is 18, you're 50, and that's okay. But are you going to have a child when you're 40 and, you're going to be 58 when that child is 18? I mean, so is it society that's pushing people to not marry when they're younger? What is it? Is it the immaturity of people today? I mean, and that goes up and down the age scale. I mean, everyone's a little immature today. I mean, look at the commercials that are on, TV, YouTube, websites everywhere. Look at the commercials. They would think we're 8 years old. Cartoons and anime, antics and jokes. And have you ever seen a serious commercial? I haven't. Anyhow, the point is, when you're young, if you marry when you're young, there are benefits. Hey, if you're going to get married in your 20s, congratulations. I wish you a wonderful and happy marriage and a wonderful and beautiful life together with each other.